and welcome to Brain vs. Heart. On a local group, there were some INTJs talking about their INFP girlfriends, and one in particular said that he had an issue with two of his girlfriends that were INFPs. His ex had broken up with him because she believed he was speaking with other women, and that the INFP he's dating now thinks that he's speaking with other women. He wanted to know why INFPs are like this and if it's an INFP thing. Well, I can speak from experience. I don't think it's every single INFP, but I do know enough about INFPs to know that if they have been hurt in the past, that they are going to look for patterns of behavior as a defense mechanism that mirror the patterns of behavior that led someone else to cheating on them or hurting them in the past, and apply it to, sometimes unwarrantedly, the new partner they're with. So I decided to answer to the question, and I'll just read my comment here. I can't speak for everyone else, but if someone hurt me, I'm really wary of people who display the same pattern of behavior. I'm an INFP, of course. Well, I dated an INTJ, and after a while, I trusted him, and guess what? He was still on dating sites. And this is when I started getting paranoid he was talking with other women. I asked him how he would have felt if he saw me on dating sites still. He said he would have been livid and probably would have dumped me. Funny, before then, because he got cheated on by both his exes, he was also paranoid of me talking to other people. I was very, very open with him and honest. Mind you, we had been dating for a while before he convinced me to move in with him, and he was still secretive. After almost losing me, he said he apologized and explained that it was a habit he had from not being sure if this would stay since his other girlfriends left him. After living together for 3 years and him almost dying in a car crash, he asked me to marry him. He said I make him happy, and despite all of his issues, I stuck it out with him. He said he knows he's hard to get along with, and I still stay. However, because of what he did after telling me I could trust him, I'm still working on trusting him and not being paranoid. After having been hurt so much when I was younger, I'd grown to mature, and so anybody I would have dated who hurt me like that or betrayed my trust, I'd just simply leave. But my INTJ is a good man. He made some dumbass mistakes, and the one thing I do not tolerate is lying. He's lied about other things, but since then, he has grown and has become very open, even about the most embarrassing and private things that other people would vilify him for. Even though I'm fiercely loyal to him and love him more than I've ever loved anyone, that pain of having my heart broken by him and being lied to is still very real. Every time I feel myself getting too comfortable or trusting him too much, it's like the logic part of my brain is telling me I'm being stupid because dropping my guard equal not recognizing patterns equal emotional damage. It is true that once you hurt an INFP, it is nigh impossible to get their full trust back. We've been together 5 years, 1.5 years married, and I still have PTSD from being heartbroken. I'm much better than I was, and my husband had apologized for hurting me in the past, and he said he would work every day to build back my trust. We love each other to pieces, and I would die for him. But that pain is real. If you have ever lied to your INFP, then understand that almost nothing you say or do past that point, short of being totally honest with everything, will fix it. Now, if she just dumps you when you've shown her evidence and performed actions to show you were trustworthy, and you've not done anything wrong, then she's batshit crazy. I'm kidding, but not really. What that means is that she needs help or therapy to get over her past issues. So that was my comment, and what I have to also say is that when I have observed other personality types, especially extroverted people who aren't as feely as we are, they seem to make the same mistakes over and over and over and over again because they have short-term memory or they live in the moment, so they conveniently forget the past or don't see the future. The problem with INFPs is that we have the better of both worlds. We love and feel everything in the moment and feel it fiercely. But on the other hand, similar to INTJs and INFJs, we see the future and we also live in the past, meaning that for us to make decisions of the future, we're always thinking about what we've done in the past, how things have occurred in the past to avoid making those mistakes in the future. We're always trying to make ourselves better. We're always ambitious, trying to learn more about the world. We love that kind of stuff. But the downside of that is when we've been hurt, it's very hard to let that go because all we can say is, wow, that thing really hurt. Don't want to ever feel that again. And we will do everything, come hell or high water, to avoid that situation. The other problem with INFPs is that our feeling sense is ridiculously OP, like ridiculously high. So if something hurts you, it will hurt you in the moment. You'll be like, God damn it, that hurt. When we feel it and something hurts us, we feel it hard and we feel it for a long time. It's a really annoying curse that I wish wasn't there. Usually if someone doesn't mean anything to us, it won't bother us anymore. But we'll still remember it because we remember the pain we felt when we did care for that person. So if I was in love with someone in the past, which has happened, I've been in love with people in the past, and I remember what that pain was like, I no longer feel anything for that person. So thinking about that person doing that doesn't hurt me, but I can apply that same memory. It's like my emotions have muscle memory, and if somebody I'm currently involved with I care about deeply, I know exactly. It's like the painful memories start flooding back and being applied to what that would feel like if this current person that I love were to hurt me or I were to lose them. And it makes us crazy. Some of the times INFPs will sabotage their relationships because they're so scared of being that in love with someone. If you don't realize that they're doing it, they may not even care that they're doing it. All they know is, yeah, let me just look for something bad about this person so I can break up with them because I don't like feeling this vulnerable. We love feeling vulnerable with people that we love. I love playing the submissive role. I don't want to say worship, but treating my partner like they're royalty. And that has always bit me in the ass. So I realized at some point through my maturity that humans are humans. And whether they're male or female, if you worship another human being and you think that's how you're supposed to treat them, like they walk on gold and do everything for them, they will take advantage of you. It is a curse that most human beings have. We are predators by nature, even though in the past we've been fed on by things, but we are considered a predator species. So we will look for weaknesses even without realizing it to neutralize it. And men will do the same thing. You have to still have your sense of identity. And sometimes when you become so in love with someone that your whole identity is wrapped up in that person, you can lose yourself. The problem with INFPs also is that we become easily disappointed. Not by other people. With strangers, if we find out something horrible about them, we're like, whatever. And even with our partners, if we find out something horrible about them, depending on what it is, most of the time, we'll be loyal to them. We'll be like, no, I don't judge you. If you want to find someone who is one of the least judgy people, INFPs are where it's at, except for if you hurt animals. We'll kill you. I'm kidding. Okay, you know what? I don't want to go into that. Anyways, what I'm trying to say is if you're not hurting other people or other innocent beings like babies and kittens and stuff, but there's something about you that other people don't like, we'll be like, all right, we'll be willing to hear you out. We'll be willing to not judge you because we like getting along with everyone. We like to see the person as they are and not how society sees them. However, if you hurt us or lie to us and we've given our heart to you, our honesty and loyalty to you, and you betray that, that's it. You might as well throw the whole INFP away because you just damaged it. It's the equivalent of pouring freezing cold water on a very hot radiator in a car. An INFP will see you very highly. They will look at you a certain way. Yes, they should not put you on a pedestal, but even with all of your flaws, once they get to know you, they still treasure you as a person. But once they realize that you don't value them the same way, they'll cut you off. As I said, don't be surprised if some INFPs will preemptively strike if they sense dishonesty. Some INFPs are so triggered and damaged, and they have not yet fixed that, they've not yet matured enough to deal with that they're basically not relationship material unless they've gotten the help that they need. Another thing to consider is that I'm not saying that OP has done anything, but sometimes INTJs may not even be aware of what they're doing. Something may be a deal breaker for the INFP and the INTJ might not see it as a big deal or even be aware that he's doing that. And sometimes the INFPs will just block you or ignore you because they've already made up their mind, and in their mind they're thinking you should know what the deal breaker is. Sometimes they expect everyone else to be as intuitive as they are and for people to know how they feel or know what they're doing is wrong. But the truth is, INTJs are one of the personality types to be very socially unaware some of the time. But if your INFP has been with you for a while and has learned to communicate with you, and she has communicated with you as to what the reason was why she feels the way she does, and you don't agree with it, or you've shrugged her off of being stupid and not actually listening to what she was saying, then in her mind she'll be like, well, this person doesn't care about how I feel or how this makes me feel, so this isn't going anywhere. And they'll just cut off the relationship at that point. And because you didn't see it as a big deal, you've completely forgotten or scrubbed whatever that conversation was from your mind. You see it one way, she saw it a completely different way. And so there was a loss in communication. The reason why my INTJ and I have gotten through a lot of situations and issues is honestly because of him. He is an expert at communicating. Not an expert in every facet of communication, but when it comes to our relationship, he has a lot more maturity than I do. Because with my personality type, if something's bothering me, unless I have been building up for a while and not saying anything and then I explode and then everything comes out, usually I stay quiet, I go away to myself and try to process things and deal with it myself. And usually that takes a very long time. My husband, no, he doesn't allow that. If he senses something is wrong, he comes to my room or calls me to his and he sits down and he says, let's talk about this. This is how I feel. You made me angry because of such and such. And he'll tell me what I did to make him upset and how he saw things. And then I'll tell him how he made me feel. And then we'll try to understand where the other is coming from. Sometimes it will be a heated debate or an argument, and sometimes it's just miscommunication. Sometimes he was frustrated because he was overwhelmed with coding for 8 hours. And at the time I came in and asked him a question, he just wasn't in the right mindset. And sometimes I'm frustrated and tired, and the way I answered him made it seem as though I was giving him an attitude about doing something that he asked me to do. And a lot of the time when we communicate, it's really not that big of a deal. Sometimes when an INFP is left alone with their thoughts, they go to the extreme possibility of all the different possibilities of what it could be. And sometimes it really isn't that serious. And what my INTJ effectively does is he cuts that process down by about a quarter. So instead of spending all that time thinking about all the different things and going away with my imagination, he cuts it off right there and he asks me what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, and he's very, very gentle. He's learned to not yell at me because he understands that if he's talking to me and he starts yelling at me when I'm honest and trying to communicate with me, that cuts off the communication. Sometimes I'll still be passionate in the way that I respond because in my mind, I'm thinking he's gonna yell at me, so I'm already ready. And honestly, he's grown a lot more mature, especially in some cases more mature than I am when it comes to having conversation. I'm still on the defense and he's always measured and ready to apologize and try to work through it. I apologize because sometimes my feelings aren't warranted. If I get really upset about something, sometimes when you look back at it, it really wasn't that necessary to be that upset. Usually for the INFP to be very, very upset over something to that degree, it would have had to have been built up for a while. So it's good for an INTJ and INFP couple to have open communication. That's the only way that works. If both are socially awkward and haven't learned to communicate their feelings effectively, they're both immature and it won't work. The INTJ will not admit when he's wrong. The INFP won't say straight what's on her mind, and it just becomes a mess. When INFPs and INTJs are mature emotionally and they learn how to communicate with each other and there's total trust between both individuals in terms of how you can communicate with each other, then it can work. And it's usually a seamless machine. And for that, I feel like my husband and I are closer than ever. We've gone through some shit. We have. But because of that, we're closer than ever. I don't judge him for who he is. He doesn't judge me for who I am. And I've had to help him with that over the years because INTJs do tend to be very judgy. I've never been judgy with him. And I let him know that, hey, I know I'm weird. I know I'm childish in certain things. But when I act like this, that is a part that I don't show anybody else. And just like you show parts of you to me and I don't judge those, you shouldn't judge me either. Unless, of course, it's something very damaging. I'm talking about in terms of my imagination and whatnot. So that's just something that I want to put out there because I know a lot of people have been asking that question, especially on the forum. When you really boil in any personality type, I would say that INFPs are actually simple, but some people would argue they're complicated. But really, if you understand each personality type or you know the ins and outs of a person, they really aren't that complicated. Things are only complicated if you don't have any understanding as to how they work. To me, putting together and assembling a car is complicated, but to a mechanic or an engineer, they're like, oh, it's a piece of cake. I know where what goes where. So it's all about understanding each other. And here's a basic breakdown. With INFPs, don't be judgy and be totally honest and open with them and be faithful. That's it. With INTJs, be honest with them, speak directly. Don't expect them to know what you're thinking because INTJs are very literal. They need you to say what you're thinking. INTJs are intuitive, but not when it comes to social things. Not as much, unless they've been trained in that. My husband has been trained somewhat, so he can pick up when someone's mad or if he said something wrong, but not all the time. There are times when strangers he doesn't know will react in a way and he won't think anything of it, and then I'll tell him later, you know that person, you pissed them off, and he'll be like, how? What did I say? And I'll tell him the tone that you used made it seem as though you were emasculating that guy. Sometimes he'll miss it, but knowing his strengths and weaknesses and him knowing mine, that helps us to complete and contrast each other and complement each other. With INFPs, if you're communicating with them, especially if it's a female, since we are very feely creatures, if we have an issue with something, especially when it comes to our feelings or our heart, don't just brush it off and say, oh, you're being ridiculous. Sit down and ask them, why do I make you feel this way? Why does that upset you so much? Before you tell them they're overreacting, try to get their point of view as to why they're acting that way. Because you have to remember that the INFP feels things completely different than an INTJ does. It doesn't mean that the INTJ doesn't have feelings. It doesn't mean that the INFP is totally crazy with their feelings, even though that can be the case sometimes. But our strengths, our ability to be nurturing and to understand people on an emotional level and be psychotherapists for people becomes a weakness when it comes to us being damaged. And everybody's strength becomes a weakness in another area of their life. So sit down and talk with these girls. If both girls are saying the same thing, and if you find that you've continued, as an INTJ, continued dating INFPs that are saying the same thing about being paranoid, is it possible that you're being a little bit secretive? Is it possible that they can intuit that you're not being totally honest? Not saying that that's the case, but it's possible. You may wonder, why does my ESTP girlfriend or my ENFP girlfriend not this way? Well, a lot of the extroverted types, or people that are living in the moment types, they may not sit down with their thoughts and process things afterwards. They live in the moment. They're not going to sit down 8 hours from now and wonder, wait a minute, why did he say that? Wait a minute, why is he so nice to me? And he's not normally that way. That's not normally his behavior. What is the pattern here? INFPs will do that. That's part of us being good writers and creative people, of having that imagination and being able to think the long game. So the reason why you see this happening usually with INFPs is because we're good at that. That's how our brain works. We can pick up things that a lot of other people can't. So consider that maybe it's something that you're secretive about. You may not even think of it as a secret, but something as simple as you saying that you work from 9 to 5 every day and you always promise that you'll be home or hanging out with her at 8, and then all of a sudden it changes to you coming home at 11 and she's asking you, why are you so late? You're like, no reason, I just work to 11 now. But you never even told her of the change of your schedule or anything like that. That's enough for her to be like, that's a weird pattern change that he wasn't honest about. You would think if our time spent together is conducive of when we have time off, why would he not tell me that very important piece of information? So you have to look at it that way. And it's not just an INFP thing, it's a people thing. If you change your behavior or you're secretive and somebody is very good with picking up that stuff, they're gonna feel like something's up there. And if you just brush it off as them being ridiculous, they're going to perceive that as you being defensive or even more secretive, and they're gonna just blow away the whole relationship and think that you're just being dishonest. So I hope that helps. A lot of what can be seen as issues could be solved with people just communicating with each other. Anyways, I hope that helped. See you in the next video.